The Big Hot Story!
Hello, TruWonder. My name is Kelsey, and it's time for the Big God Story. Before we get started today, I have a question for you guys. Do you have a best friend? I want you to think of that person in your life who's your best friend, who you do everything with. Maybe you go to school with them, or maybe you live with them. Maybe they're a sibling. Maybe there's someone you know from church or from your neighborhood. God made us to love others, and friendship is one of the best ways that we see that God is love. Well, as we've been learning all about David and Israel and how God had put King Saul in charge, and then King Saul forgot that God was in charge, so God decided to bring a new king about, right? And his name was David. And before Remember and Celebrate, we learned about how David fought the giant Goliath, and that God was with David and helped him defeat Goliath. Well, soon after that battle, King Saul had a son, and his name was Jonathan. And Jonathan and David became best friends. God shows us that He is love through our close friends, and that's what God did with Jonathan and with David. Well, King Saul gave David a very important job in his army. And God was with David. And every battle that David fought, he won. And the people loved David. And they loved that he won all of these battles, and they would sing big songs and have huge celebrations about all of these victories. But do you know what? King Saul didn't like that at all. He became really jealous, and he didn't like how all of the people loved David so much. In fact, he wanted to kill David. He even told Jonathan, his son, to kill David. He told Jonathan to kill his best friend. Well, friends, God was with David, and Jonathan was his best friend and didn't want to hurt David. And their friendship grew even stronger. And David promised Jonathan that he would always be kind to him and his family. And he promised this because he would be able to do it with God's help. God is love, and He can show us how to share love with others. Well, David and Jonathan made a plan to keep David safe from King Saul. And so David was to wait by a stone, and Jonathan would speak to his dad and come back, and he would shoot 3 arrows into the field. If Jonathan would send a servant out, and he would tell him to go get the arrows. And if he told the servant, if the arrows are on this side, bring them here, then David was safe to come back. But if Jonathan said, the arrows are too far, just leave them, then David had to leave the kingdom forever because he wasn't safe from Saul and that anger and jealousy. Well, Jonathan went home to see what he could find out, and David hid by that rock. When Jonathan returned to the field, he shot his 3 arrows, and he shot them very, very far, and he told his servant boy, leave the arrows. What did that mean? That meant that David had to run. But before he did, Jonathan found David. He told him, leave quickly, and he had to say goodbye to his best friend. They both cried and hugged each other as they said goodbye. They reminded each other of the promises they made as friends and that God loved them. And then David left and Jonathan went home. Friends, God is love, and He showed His love through the friendship of Jonathan and David. And then in the story, many years passed, and David heard that King Saul and his son Jonathan, David's best friend, were killed in a battle. He was very sad, both for King Saul and for Jonathan. And soon after, David was crowned king, and he remembered the promise that he'd made to his best friend Jonathan to show kindness to all of Jonathan's family. And so David found one of Jonathan's sons named Mephibosheth, and he gave him everything that belonged to his father. He made sure that he had enough food to eat and clothes to wear and a land to live on. He showed love to Jonathan's family. God is love, and we can show God's love to people in our lives every day, especially those people that are our best friends. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story about how God is love, and I hope you look for ways this week to show that love to those in your lives. I love you guys so much, and we'll see you next week for the Big God story. Goodbye.